A foggy walk on the dam. The disappearance of a family in Niagara. It all began unusually calmly, as if nature itself had set the perfect trap. It was a foggy evening in mid-November of 1982 when the Carter family set out for their usual walk along the old dam on the American side of Niagara Falls. The family consisted of 5 people: husband and wife Tom and Mary Carter, their 2 children Jake and Sarah, and grandmother Ruth. They left their blue minivan in the parking lot at the entrance, locked the doors, and took with them only a camera and a couple of thermoses filled with hot chocolate. A light veil of mist covered the surface of the water, and the faint glow of the lanterns barely pierced the damp air. Later, by 9 o'clock in the evening, a local security guard noticed that their car was still parked at the entrance, and the gate to the dam was slightly open. He walked along the trail, but saw no tracks, no belongings, nor any signs of people having been there. Only at the very edge of the water lay a woolen hat, which the relatives later identified as Sarah's. The police arrived almost immediately. They cordoned off the shore, but neither the lanterns nor the search dogs were enough to find anything at all. All the fog that night was like a wall that could not be pierced by either light or sound. Experts combed both banks of the river for several miles, brought in divers, but absolutely no evidence was found. There were no broken branches, no signs of a struggle, not even any leftover food or personal belongings, except for that single hat. Later, when analyzing the film in the camera, the police saw only ordinary family photo-smiling faces against the backdrop of the dam, shots of the misty surface of the water, and not a single hint of danger. The medical drone, launched to search from the sky, did not detect any human figures. Over the following week, more than 50 witnesses were interviewed, but no one had seen the Carter family after 6 o'clock in the evening. Not a single camera within a couple of miles recorded their movements. Even hunters who were on the other side of the reservoir claimed they hadn't heard a scream or a splash of water. It seemed as if in the damp silence of the evening, the entire family had simply vanished, leaving behind mysteries and a frightening emptiness on the shore. When the last hope of finding any trace of the missing began to fade, the investigators recalled another case connected to the unpredictable nature of disappearances near the water. Only this time it was not about a family, but an entire expedition that disappeared in the wilds near a lake whose name has since become a symbol of mystery. The vanished expedition at Lake of Angels. The story of the expedition at Lake of Angels began in early June 1957, when a group of 7 researchers set out for one of the most inaccessible places in the northern part of Washington state. Their goal was to document rare species of fish and plants, as well as to investigate rumors about unusual geological formations. The team included 3 biologists, a road driver named Earl Mitchell, a photographer, and 2 local guides members of the Klallam tribe. For the expedition, they prepared 2 aluminum canoes, a 2-week supply of provisions, and modern equipment including radios, a generator, and photographic gear. They were last seen at a small shelter on the eastern shore of the lake, where the group had stopped for lunch. A local ranger who had come by to check his gear noted neatly arranged tents, a campfire with still warm coals, and fresh boot prints along the shoreline. According to his account, the atmosphere in the camp was lively. Everyone seemed energetic and calm. 3 days after that, when the communications team failed to make contact, rescuers arrived at the camp. They were met with a surprise at the site. There were 2 canoes, neatly tied to a tree, the tents were undamaged, the food was still there, and there were no signs of damage to the radio receiver. Notebooks with notes and filmed reels lay untouched. However, there was no trace of the people. On the sandy shore, patches of dry and wet sand alternated, as if someone had recently walked by and then disappeared into the shadows of the pine trees. One of the guides left a diary in which he mentioned a strange thick mist that descended over the water at dawn and soft rhythmic sounds resembling stones being struck together. The tracking dog brought in for the search lost the trail right at the path leading from the camp to the lake. No notes about the tragedy or any signs of struggle were found either on the water or among the boulders. Inside the tent, sleeping bags and personal belongings were neatly arranged. Later, analysts discovered a high concentration of rare minerals in the soil which were not found in the surrounding area. For almost 2 weeks, rescuers combed the shores, inspected caves and ravines, and used echolocation around the lake, but all in vain. Soon, rumors about the expedition's disappearance spread among the locals, and people in the village began talking about old legends connected to the lake. A century ago, the indigenous people considered this body of water a place where a strange misty shroud would appear, from which one might never return. Thus, the disappearance at Angel Lake remained a mystery forever, and over time the expedition's belongings were added to the small museum in the nearest town. However, almost 15 years later, journalists linked this case to yet another mysterious story involving the sudden disappearance of a large vehicle right in the middle of a clear, sunny day in the very heart of Florida. A bolt from the blue. The story of the vanished flight in Florida. On the sunny morning of the 12th of October 1975, everything began without a hint of concern. A Douglas DC-3 passenger plane operated by Sunbird Airlines was preparing for a short flight between Orlando and Tampa. There were 26 people on board, 22 passengers and 4 crew members, including the experienced pilot Greg Taylor. The departure took place on schedule from Herndon Airport. The crew gave a standard report to the controllers and set a course westward. The weather was nearly perfect, not a single cloud, a light breeze, and visibility of more than 30 miles. 25 minutes after takeoff, the plane was flying over the Everglades marshes when it suddenly stopped responding to communications. The controller tried several times to get a response, but only silence remained on the air. The aircraft vanished from the radar as if it had been erased with a digital eraser. Before that, there was a clear signal, but the next mark was already gone. No emergency signals, abrupt maneuvers, or reports of technical problems were recorded. Rescue teams were assembled within a matter of hours. Helicopters and small planes were dispatched from Tampa, Miami, and Orlando for an aerial survey. After a few hours, the search was expanded to cover hundreds of square miles of swampy terrain. From the air, pilots could clearly see traces of old fire roads and occasional boats, but no wreckage, fuel spills, or signs of a crash were found by anyone. Amateur radio operators monitored the flight's frequencies, hoping to catch even echoes of communications, but found nothing. On the ground, groups of volunteers together with local sheriffs combed the swamps using airboats and long poles. Not a single part of the fuselage or seats, no luggage surfaced even after several days. Ecologists and rescuers noted that the Everglades swamps often hold dangerous surprises, but the disappearance of an airplane nearly 70 feet long without a trace seemed impossible. To test the hypothesis of a possible crash into the water, sonar equipment and military underwater drones were brought in. However, the equipment did not detect any distortions or metallic objects on the bottom of the largest channels. During the several months of searching, not only relatives, but also journalists and even pilots from other companies continued to send reports of possible strange lights and shadows in the area where the disappearance occurred. But none of the theories were confirmed. The flight documents, crew members' personal belongings, and even the registered parcels that were supposed to be on board did not turn up at any airport. Insurance companies paid compensation to the families, but in the FBI archives, the case is still listed as missing in airspace. On the anniversary of the disappearance, a memorial marker was installed along the route between Orlando and Tampa. And on local radio stations, you can still hear stories about the strange calm and silence broken only by thunder out of a clear sky. After this mysterious incident, reports of other disappearances began to come in as well. But now it was among the winter plains, where the only witnesses are footprints in the snow that suddenly end in emptiness, as if nature itself is hiding its secret beneath a white blanket. Footprints in the snow leading to nowhere, the Dyatlov mystery. The harsh Ural winter of 1959, 9 students and graduates of the Polytechnic Institute set out on a ski trek across the northern Urals. The group is led by Igor Dyatlov. Among them are experienced hikers, engineers, and athletes. Their route passes through mountains and valleys in search of new adventures. In early February, after a long ascent, the group sets up camp on the treeless slope of Mount Kolatsiakle, known to the local Mansi people as the Mountain of the Dead. At night, the snowfall intensifies and the temperature drops to minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit. 3 days later, rescuers find the abandoned tent, cut open from the inside. Belongings, food, and shoes are left behind, and only sleeping bags stick out from under the overhanging snow. There is not a single voice or campfire around. Barefoot and partially barefoot footprints are visible in the snow, leading down toward the forest, then disappearing into the open field. The searchers find 2 bodies at the edge of the forest, 3 more a little further down the slope, and the rest 2 months later in a ravine under a thick layer of snow. The bodies have strange injuries, broken ribs, internal bleeding but no external wounds, and some are missing their tongues and lips. The clothing seems to have been hastily removed and put on over one another. Delving into the investigation, experts discover elevated levels of radiation on some of the items. The arriving military take away the found diaries and film rolls, leaving behind only fragmentary notes about strong winds and an unusual light on the horizon. The first witnesses are local hunters who speak of a sudden gust of icy wind and a blinding glow on the night of the disappearance. All traces end abruptly. No hoof tracks, no signs of a struggle, only even footprints disappearing among the snow-covered rock. The forest was silent, no one heard a scream, and animals avoided this place. The group's cameras contain several unclear shots, blurred streaks of light, a faint silhouette among the trees. The Dyatlov case is still officially closed as an accident, and the mountain remains a legend among tourists and locals of the Urals. And although documentary evidence has yet to shed light on all the details of the incident, the story of the footprints leading nowhere has joined the list of the most mysterious disappearances, making people once again ponder the secrets hidden beneath the snow. But snow is not the only silent witness in such stories. Sometimes a mystery can hide on a distant island, among ruins and the shadows of vanished civilizations, where a disappearance leaves behind only the whisper of the wind and strange marks on ancient stones. The mystery of the disappearance of the girl on Roanoke Island off the coast of North Carolina, seems quiet and peaceful at first glance. However, it was there that a mysterious disappearance unfolded a story that historians and paranormal enthusiasts still debate to this day. It all began in the summer of 1601, when a young woman named Alison Dane, who had arrived from Plymouth with a group of settlers, became one of those who decided to stay after the English colonists left. The locals noted that Alison stood out among the others. She got along well with the Croatan Indians, could start a fire using an old lens, and, according to her neighbors, often disappeared into the island's thickets at night. On the afternoon of August 14th, Alison went to the southern part of the island to pick berries. Two friends went with her, but Alison soon separated from them, getting carried away with searching for wild raspberries. A few hours later, anxious cries attracted the attention of local hunters. At the scene, only a basket of berries remained, and nearby were strange tracks resembling barefoot footprints of various sizes. One of the tracks led to some old stones on the outskirts of the ruins, where the homes of the first settlers once stood. The search for the girl continued for 3 days. The first night passed in pouring rain, and when dawn broke, a small piece of fabric was found on the blackberry bushes, later identified by Alison's mother by the embroidered letter E. The Native Americans who assisted in the search claimed that they saw a strange glow in the forest at night, and along the path they found branches arranged in the shape of a spiral. The village watchman spoke of strange moans coming from the center of the island that same night. The dogs lost the trail right at the broken base of the old watchtower. The hunters searched the caves and coastal cliffs, but no further clues were found. Alison's food, water, and personal belongings remained untouched in her small cabin. After her disappearance, the word Croatoan was found carved into the rocks at the site of the last discovery, a detail no one had noticed before. The investigation lasted several days, but neither the coroner nor the clergy invited from the neighboring village could explain where or how the girl could have vanished from an open island surrounded by water. For a long time afterward, people in the settlement spoke of shadows among the ruins and strange echoes, as if someone was whispering names in the night. Alison's story was lost among the other disappearances of Roanoke, but it was her tale that became the basis for many later stories about mysterious vanishings on remote islands. And while the residents tried to forget this strange story, life on the mainland went on, and new mysteries awaited travelers on the deserted roads of the West, where truck drivers encountered equally inexplicable meetings. A mysterious encounter on the highway, a Texas truck driver story. After the mysterious events on Roanoke Island faded into legend, a new story that took place in the vastness of Texas caught the attention of mystery enthusiasts. This case made headlines across the country after an experienced truck driver, Ben Harris, spoke about his encounter with an inexplicable disappearance on a deserted highway near the town of Marfa. On the 6th of March 2005, at around 2 in the morning, Harris's truck, loaded with spare parts, was traveling along Highway 90 in a light rain. Visibility was excellent, and there were no other cars for miles around. Ben noted the highway checkpoint at a small gas station in his logbook, mapped out a route to the nearest rest stop, and turned his radio to his favorite trucker's station. A few minutes later, he saw a man standing by the roadside, dressed in a dark jacket and jeans, sticking out his thumb in hopes of catching a ride. At first, Harris wanted to drive past, but something about the stranger's behavior seemed oddly familiar to him. He slowed down, rolled down the side window, and offered him a ride. The man quickly climbed into the cab, introduced himself as Thomas, and asked to be taken to a motel 40 miles to the west. There was a strange silence in the cab. Thomas hardly spoke, and his face was hidden by a hood. After driving about 15 miles, Harris noticed that the clock on the dashboard suddenly started blinking, and the truck's headlights dimmed on their own. A light mist settled over the road as if steam had suddenly risen from nowhere. In the next second, the stranger sitting beside him vanished right before Ben's eyes, leaving no trace, no sound, not even an imprint on the seat. Slamming on the brakes, Harris got out of the truck, walked around the vehicle with a flashlight, but there was no one nearby, nor any fresh footprints on the wet asphalt. 5 minutes after the incident, he noticed a strange trembling in his hands, and from the radio speaker came an indistinct voice, repeating the same word over and over, "Come back!" The nearest gas station confirmed that only one vehicle had recently passed along the highway, his own. Later, the surveillance cameras at the motel where Thomas was supposedly hidden did not record a single guest by that name. Journalists from the local newspaper found 2 more truck drivers who, on the same night, saw a glowing figure in the same area. but no one was able to provide a logical explanation for what they had seen. Local residents had long spoken of strange lights that appear over the highway at night, linking these phenomena to the ghostly travelers of Marfa. As a result, Ben Harris's story made it into police reports and became one of the most talked about tales among drivers throughout the Southwest. And when, a month later, another car disappeared in the same area, the story only gained more frightening details, adding to the list of mysterious vanishings that lead travelers off familiar roads into an entirely different reality. But the most unusual part of this series of events was the flash of light after which the teenagers from the national park vanished as if they had dissolved into thin air, a flash of light and silence. The disappearance of the teenagers in the national park on the 11th of July 2010 in Yellowstone National Park on the west coast of the United States, 3 teenagers, Jason Miller, Amy Green, and Zach O'Neill, set out on a hike along a popular trail to the Geyser Valley. At around 12 noon, a camera at the entrance to the northern sector recorded them. The kids were carrying backpacks, joking around, and taking selfies on their phones, and one of the parking lot cameras later recorded the license plate of the car they arrived in. The teenagers' parents stated that the route and return time had been agreed upon down to the minute, and the friends knew how to use a map and a GPS. One of them was into hiking, while the other made nature vlogs. The last phone signal was received at around 2 in the afternoon. Jason sent a photo of a geyser to the group of friends. 15 minutes later, a surveillance camera at a remote emergency station captured a flash of bright blue light that lasted only a few seconds. It was at this moment that the motion sensors on the nearest section of the trail recorded the strange disappearance of the signal. No movement whatsoever was detected, not even a trace of animal activity within half a mile. By evening, when the parents hadn't received the call, they contacted the rangers. Within just 3 hours, a team of 8 people, along with a search dog equipped with a special GPS collar, followed the fresh tracks to the last point of contact. Markers and signs indicated that the teenagers had not strayed more than a quarter mile from the trail. At the site of the disappearance, 3 plastic water bottles and a granola bar were found lying right in the middle of the trail. No signs of a struggle, clothing, blood, or other personal belongings were found. That same night, the search continued using thermal imaging devices, but the equipment only detected small heat signatures from small animals and nothing resembling human presence. 2 independent witnesses down in the valley reported that around the same time, they saw a bright flash, and after that felt a brief shockwave. It was as if there was a short rumble and then absolute silence fell. One of the rangers later claimed that he had only seen a similar light during the most intense electromagnetic storms, but on that day not a single thunderstorm was recorded within a 100-mile radius. At dawn, the police cordoned off the section of the trail and conducted a thorough search all the way to the gorge. However, no clothing, backpacks, or traces of shoes were found on the soft ground. Even the footprints that had been recorded in the morning had disappeared after the flash, as if someone had erased them. And for some reason, the surveillance camera that captured the flash did not retain the recording. All that remained on the tape was white noise. The rangers' reports, satellite images, and security experts' testimonies all pointed to one thing. In the entire history of the park, there had never been a case where a group of people could disappear like this. In a perfectly visible area, on a clear day, with no sign of struggle or escape. Volunteers, a tracking dog, and even a helicopter equipped with infrared cameras were brought in for the search, but with each passing day, the chances of finding even the slightest clue grew slimmer. Just 2 weeks later, the investigation was put on hold, and the friends and families of the missing still returned to this place, trying to understand what could have happened in that brief moment when a flash of light and sudden silence on the trail became the final chapter in the story of yet another of the most inexplicable disappearances forever recorded in the chronicles of America's national park mysteries.